Hi, everybody. Good morning and wonderful to, well, good evening to you and wonderful to see you all. Actually, I wanted to add another word from what Paige just said. The investigation I've been making and the shapes that have come as a result of the investigation that I've been making is with it in mind to make a movie on Bosnia, which we started off by having a look at in the first session, what is in Bosnia and the science that's been found from investigations made into the Bosnian pyramids, etc., etc. So what I've done is using this information and other information that's come my way, sort of out of synchronicity and spontaneously, I have been following this journey, which is almost 4 years now. I mean, it's 3.5 years since I met Sam Osmanagic in September 2016 when he asked me to make the movie on Bosnia. And since then, I have been searching for a way to make this movie, not just go there, take some visuals and put them together, make a documentary, but to embed the meaning of Bosnia, of the Bosnian pyramids, into the movie by first creating a shape or shapes which I can use to create the timeline. And that's what we're going to have a look at today, as well as a few more bits of information about various topics that came up along the way. So last time we finished up with looking at how I discovered a new picture which came out of nowhere as I was returning from my trips to Bosnia and Canada last year, where I'd been presenting Crystal of Time at several conferences. I came back to India, and when I was home, I started editing, or proofreading rather, a book that I had already published, but I'd found some typos in it. And I decided to give the book another whole proofread. And during that time, I was starting to lay out the Bosnian movie based on Crystal of Time, based on the interpretation I had currently found to date. So this is what I started doing. I started focusing on the two aspects of light, meaning the visuals, and sound, the music. And I wanted to create a completely new layout. If you remember rightly, I showed you, or I discussed a very, very early layout that I had based on an octave of harmonic resonance. And I wanted to continue that, using that line of thought, but also to expand it and to include some of the other bits of information that I found along the way. So regarding the light, I decided that the visuals would run as 12 segments. You can see here on this picture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 equal segments of 5 minutes each, which would total a film of 60 minutes. And based on the 12 main circles of indestructible drop and the 5 aspects of the, in fact, at this point, I have to say that the indestructible drop has not emerged yet, but now I'm looking back at this layout and interpreting it from new eyes with the new picture involved. So based on the 12 main circles of the indestructible drop and the 5 aspects of the elements and mental aspects, 5 times 12 equals 60. So and even at this point, 60 seemed like a good base number because it's corresponding to many natural time harmonics, like 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, etc., etc. And the sound, the music would be spread out across the whole timeline, divided into 5 different types, decreasing in time into its center in golden ratio proportion. You can see here the music is written in color. So dividing these 5 aspects, it would come out as 9 segments, starting with 11.5 minutes, divided by 1.618, 7 minutes, divided by 1.618, etc., etc. So And then later I came back to see that this would be like the emanating vibrations in Indestructible drop. Here is the maths of the process. So I would not only have music to cover the whole 60 minutes in golden ratio, increments of golden ratio, I would also have the music covering every 5 minutes of visuals in golden ratio. The 5 categories of music would run as drumming and singing, bowl playing, gong playing, and meditation sounds, which means like humming or om or other sounds that are made during or after silent meditation that I filmed at the Bosnian Pyramids. I filmed the groups there doing these meditations. So to clarify this, here's a chart which makes it a bit easier for you to understand. Each 5-minute segment would run in golden ratios, so 57.5 seconds divided by 1.618, 35 seconds, 22.5, etc., etc. And then the whole movie would also have this same aspect, 11.5, as I explained on the page before, in increments. It was 7 minutes, so that would come to 8, that would come to 18.5 minutes, etc., etc. But then I thought, when I tried it out, I realized that I'd been a bit stupid. Although it was a very interesting idea, actually, I realized that the sequence of these 5-minute sections would completely cover this long process of the golden ratio of music. So what was the point in that? It was a good idea, but you know, I have to explore and I have to look at all aspects. But you know, at this point, back in September last year, I realized that I simply wasn't ready. Something was still missing. And I was just kind of like scratching around, trying to find the 12 categories for the visuals. What would the headings be? I mean, I'd been through the visuals I had for the movie. I'd made some categories like people on the Pyramid of the Sun, people in the Ravne Park, people in the tunnels, Sam describing this, blah, blah, blah. But really what I needed to do was to find 12 concise categories that would also relate to other aspects that I discovered through my process of investigation. Also, I felt that this was still a bit linear. I was looking at 12 equal segments of time. I felt like I needed to somehow twist the visuals in a way. How do you do that? Well, I did manage to achieve that in my last movie, actually, by turning, in fact, when I take the visuals, when I film, I'm actually looking at different items or different people from different sides. So you may have a face on, side view, back view, side view, and then using that, you can actually twist the visuals into a circle. So these were all still considerations in my mind. And remember the key point that I do not have the picture, the new picture, the Indestructible drop yet. And I was kind of like fumbling around in the dark. I was having some ideas, I was making mistakes, but it doesn't make, mistakes are good. If you don't try out things, then you're never going to get anywhere. So I really felt I needed to get back to the drawing board and see how I could make the movie turn, and to also refine some of the details that I'd thought about already. So we already had a look at this picture last time, and this was the impetus. This was what was behind the creation of Indestructible Drop. And I needed so badly to have this input in order to help me create the Indestructible Drop. This is like a seed of information, but that's all you need when you create. You just need that little story, you know, and from one idea you can create a whole logical process. So I just wanted to recap at the beginning of this session about this these cycles of time shift according to the states of perception. So here we have a point emerging from subtle space and becoming a material particle or pixel of light. And I've described that process in detail before. And let's just imagine that this line that comes between these 2 points, let's imagine that this is 1 octave of harmonic resonance in semi-intervals. So 12 such explosions occur, creating an octave of harmonic resonance. So they come into material substance as particles from the subtle realm of non-material, making up an octave of harmonic resonance as semi-intervals. And then bending this line around, so joining the 2 ends together, creates, and let's presume or assume that they're sitting in the positions of the numbers of a clock. So rather than having here the linear time of past, present, future, as you would have on any linear line, you now have a sense of infinity. There is no definite starting point, there's no ending point, it's just any point on the circumference could be the start or the ending point. So it makes it infinite in that sense. Naturally, a circle seeks its central point because that holds the power of all its shape. It's its energetic source. And so doing that, it creates a spiral, which automatically creates an anti-spiral. When looked at from another angle, is a toroid, which is, in a nutshell, an infinite flow around a singularity, which is in perpetual self-reference to itself, until it collapses back into its central point, like into a black hole, let's say, to become its subtle spiritual state after realizing the illusion of its manifest self. Otherwise, it continues to go round and round and round and round and round and round and round. And all this is happening, so this is kind of a relative appearance, all this is happening without that pure state of spiritual awareness actually ever leaving its original space. Simply its quality of perception is occurring. And this is creating the illusion of an entire universe of existence around itself through its various interpretations of itself. Simple as that, no more than that. Otherwise, we are just pure awareness. So developing the indestructible drop doorway to infinity, you will see this picture didn't come in either. This picture didn't come in seconds. It was a process of step by step of making sketches. First, there were the 12 main circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whoops, sorry, I clicked on the chart there. So you can see the 12 main circles in the positions of a number of the clock. And then I created emanations around it in golden ratio. So now I was using information that I had been collecting along the way to create this picture. Information that also Crystal of Time had told me quite easily. So Indestructible Drop is demonstrating how time interacts with space in a nutshell. And as all creation is the product of thought, what you think appears, and all thought is electromagnetic, producing some degree of light or darkness into the whole equation of creation, which is interactive at the level of electromagnetic fields and waves. And this is the bottom line of everything. As we think, so appears. Depending on how you interact with the space, the appearance around you, the manifest reality around you, or rather how your perception strikes the vibratory field, as in when it interprets it, creates a certain oscillation of frequency that subsequently gets fed back immediately, like without any time delay, into the system, collapsing waves of vibration of perception into particles which become a state of appearance, which is what we see around us, which is where the stories of heaven and hell come in. You know, thinking good thoughts, you will create a heaven around you, heaven of appearance, and thinking bad thoughts, you'll create a hell of appearance around you. Actually, there is only the truth of an absolute reality, which here is depicted by the whole golden circle. The base of this picture is just a golden piece of cloth, basically, but that is representative of this absolute reality. But when the vibrations of perception, which is related to that absolute awareness, let's call it, or that absolute space of being, when the vibrations of perception occur, so do dimensions of existence appear. So all these colors and shapes and everything else in the picture is basically the interpretation of the perceptive quality of that pure awareness, creating an appearance around it. So when we perceive existence as our time pulse is set according to our rate or speed of perception. So it's a law. I mean, we just can't get past this law. Change the energy, change the mass, i.e. whatever you think will appear. So emanating outwards like a pulse from the center, so having this kind of mandala effect of pulsing out, and as well as inwards from the circumference. Indestructible drop is where the fusion of sound vibration as light occurs, causing an explosion into first substance of subatomic particles. Where interference occurs, i.e. where waves of perception perceive sound waves as something, they cross, causing the relevant light to occur, which also depends on the frequency of perception. So there's this continuous play, this loop, which is always occurring. Just we can't get past that unless we realize it's true, and then we have a measure of control over it. This vortex of vibration creates space, at the apex of which a point or a particle is emitted as an explosion of energy containing sound, light, and perception. And I explained that last time already. It is the first place of manifestation, holding all potential within it, like a bliss field, the vortex through which subtle energy can emerge as material, i.e. where fusion of subtle energies take place into material substance. And each of these 12 rings, inside the one ring, which is the 13th, is a portal connecting subtle and material layers, dimensions of existence, that occur once perception has strayed. And I use that word loosely because perception, actually the quality of perception is completely part of, it's inherent to pure awareness, but it's the quality of perception that creates this possibility of the whole of manifest reality coming into being. So this inherent state of pure awareness does not exist within a space as we know space to be. And this is very important. It belongs to a non-manifest reality where there's no time nor space for us to even perceive it. And that's really kind of trippy to get the brain around. In fact, we just can't comprehend it. It's, I mean, this state, this pure awareness is a state of emptiness, which is nonetheless luminous in the sense of having an experiential knowing about it. And even if we can't describe what it is, we can experience that quality of knowing, and that's about it. We can perceive that there is something. Due to how you perceive everything, which is a quality that can be used by your human brain, you're thus coding appearance using frequencies, perception, interacting with sound waves, which are actually a state of inherent luminosity, now emerging in a manifesting dimensional state. So without holding the knowing of one's essence, you are thus constantly misinterpreting appearance as something or other, and that's where judgment comes. That's where we get into karmic crisis, basically creating all sorts of causes and effects which go on infinitum, until we get liberation when perception realigns with its pure awareness, consciously realigns with its pure awareness. Then it is acting from a different point of view, it's acting from a different perspective, and acting within the qualities of that awareness, which include big words like wisdom and compassion and the rest of it. So Circle of Immortality, this picture here that I made in 2005, demonstrates how mind creates the manifest reality within its mirror. And actually, it took me a long time to realize it, that this spiral above the mirror is our perception, and what occurs inside the mirror is the appearance. Whereas the opposite occurs when the apexes, so from here, join, say, another similar spiral, like we have in this picture here, when the apexes of the spirals come together, and this is manifest reality, appearance, dissolving back into pure awareness, its opposite aspect, its anti-spin, i.e., inside and opposite. So when you look into a mirror, you see the right side of your face looks like it's on the left, and the left side of your face looks like it's on the right, etc. So like this. So here we have the manifest reality going through this singularity, and here is the, and I'm not going to say realm of awareness because it isn't a space or a realm, but it is the qualities of awareness, not a space, not a time, not a place, but qualities of the light of pure awareness. So we've already looked at this in some detail in previous sessions. Dan Winter's Pine Cones Kissing Noses. This is the same principle where Hertzian waves are fired down into through two vortices into a central point where they implode and phase conjugate, which basically means they disappear into another dimensional state. What does this mean in real terms? And again, I say real very seriously here, because we could talk about all sorts of superficial things, but in terms of our existence and in terms of our reality, this is the process of dissolving our molecular or cellular structure from a state of physicality through using our mental capacity to return to our light source, our spiritual being. In other words, this is the process of enlightenment. And Crystal of Time shows this process of the two vortices coming into a central point, and the new picture, the Indestructible drop, describes this central place where this occurs. So let's have a look at some more detail. Now, during these days, I am also I'm sticking the photos onto the little circles, which I haven't shown you till now because I haven't quite completed it yet. In fact, you'll see in this picture, I'm still working on the red circles, and I still haven't put the photos onto the green yet, but that's happening during these weeks. It's a very long process. Now, if I were to put my hand in this picture, in fact, I can explain to you quite easily, these small photos on top of the yellow circles, I could cheat by making with my hole puncher. That's how small those circles are. The next circles up are again in golden ratio increments. These circles on the white had to be all hand cut. So this was a very, very fiddly process, but I finished the white circles now, and I'm now working on the red circles. I've done about half, and these are slightly larger. You can see again in golden ratio compared to the photos on the white circles. But there's another reason for me putting this picture here, which I'll describe to you now. So I've shown you this picture before. It just explains the Indestructible drop a bit more clearly, in the sense that when you see the picture in whole, you see this process where you've got 9 layers of harmonic resonance expressed by 9 different sizes of circles in 5 colors, emanating in golden ratio proportions within one whole circle. But because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the bigger picture there are 9 of these, it's really difficult to see this emanation of these 9 layers. Here is the principal layer. These are the numbers on the 12. Is this is the blue one, the one of space, which is this one here. And then going in, in fact, I'll point it to you on this picture. You've got the blue, you've got the green, you've got the red, you've got the yellow, you've got the white, which when they make 12 circles in themselves also create emanations extending from this point outwards. So you've got the blue extending to the green circle, which is containing the white dots, etc., etc. So you've got the red, then you've got the green, and then you've got the yellow in the around the edge of the circle. So the four layers of circles do something interesting. The 4 layers of the circles of the photo, sorry, do something interesting, because this expands the number of the 9 layers of harmonic resonance to 13 dimensions. 9 plus 4 is 13. So for example, here you've got a blue circle, and within that blue circle you've got 12 yellow circles, and on top of the 12 yellow circles you've got 12 blue circles again. So you've got 3 different dimensional layers within each circle. The same goes for this one. You've got the green circle, then you've got inside, you've got the 12 white circles, and on top you've got the 12 green circles, and this happens the whole way through. So space leading to the dance of the other 4 elements, and hence physical manifestation, and time as consciousness and its 4 mental aspects, i.e. that which drives the physical manifestation, occur when perception breaks its inherent alignment with awareness, creating this perpetual feedback loop of perceptive awareness interpreting the entire manifest universe as a display around itself until it realizes what it is, consciously so. So here's a little chart down at the bottom with the space blue, that one, containing the yellow earth, which is also related to the mental aspect of form. Then space, wind, fire, water, earth. And then this way we go with the mental aspects: form, feeling, perception, conditioning, and consciousness. And this is described in a lot of detail in fact in the Buddhist texts, in the process of creation of ego from form, which is a very first almost like a particle existence, to full-on consciousness through this process. But I'm not going to get into that now. That would require a whole session in itself. So you've seen this photograph before, but this is another very interesting meeting that I had at the Global Pyramid Conference. And here I am sitting on the panel next to Dr. Karim. And at the end of the panel is this lady, Mary Hardy, who, in fact, at the end of the conference, she handed me her book, this book, The Pyramid Energy, Philosophy of God, Science of Man. To which I thanked her very much, took it, and off I went on my journeys, coming back to India, popped it on my bookshelf, etc., etc. But very recently, in fact, only back in January, I picked it up for some reason and started reading it, and couldn't believe why on earth I hadn't read it before, because it actually contains some very, very pertinent and extremely interesting points about, and I am going to get into some of these in a moment, but just a word on why she actually made this or wrote this book. Due to her son's dyslexia, and this was back in the 1970s when this was not common talk, actually. She was really avant-garde at the time. Her family was guided to build a couple of pyramids in their backyard to electromagnetically bring the aura of her son, who had this dyslexia, into line with the physical plane. I mean, they weren't going to do anything by halves. They were going to do it properly, not just stick some tablets in his mouth and tell him to be quiet. They were going to work out how he, with this different mental situation, could exist properly, well, and easily within this physical plane. I mean, great work, really. I mean, incredible. And this book is a description of the journey to achieve this and what they learned on the way. So I resonated very well with this, because also she works along the lines of synchronicity and sort of following intuition and all the rest of it. So I like that very much. So what does Mary tell us? She talks about, first of all, she talks about pyramid energy. The pyramid of Cheops, with its principal 3 chambers, the subterranean queens and king's chambers, was built as a temple of initiation to help mankind expand into a higher state of consciousness. I'm sure this is not news for many of you, but I'm just going to reiterate what she says to give it a flow. The pyramid, as she says, is an antenna that refocuses light into its subatomic particles, which she calls tachyon energy. And the pyramid is a large electromagnetic energy collector, which is collecting all frequencies of energy and placing them into layers, one upon the other. The knowledge of shapes, as you know extremely well from biogeometry, and the electromagnetic fields they produce has been handed down from other generations, which is why pyramids also come in different shapes, because they have different purposes. Light is refocused into matter and antimatter and held in place by the electromagnetic spiral of the vortex, which also has a toroidal shape. And I've explained that to you just earlier today. At the point of achieving oneness or attuning ourselves to this energy, matter as we know it passes away. So here again, we look at this spiral, we have the manifest reality. It goes into this point of singularity in the center and passes away, and we can enter the subatomic or etheric world of light. Time and space no longer exist in this state of consciousness. Past, present, and future are all infinite, and the human vessel has dissolved to enter the world of the absolute. So a little bit like the line bending around to become a circle. So past, present, future becomes infinite in that sense. Mysteriously coded within the subatomic energy of Cheops is the key to mankind's freedom from matter. And she describes this in some detail. So back to this Caduceus, which we talked about several sessions ago, actually, just the basics of it, but I learned a lot more about it from her book. And this winged staff of Hermes with 2 serpents twined about it was used by the Brotherhood as a measurement of light to determine the degree of consciousness that a person has. It also represents the column of light, which is a shaft that can be seen in the middle of the pyramid, as well as representing the 7 electrical points of the body called chakras, which you're all very familiar with, I'm absolutely sure. Medicine once used to deal with electrical knowledge of the body, and these days we still have acupuncture, but you know, it's considered still a sidelined sort of alternative medicine, unfortunately, because it's very, very efficient as a healing process. But medicine once dealt with this electrical knowledge of the body, like full on. But because it can't be seen, nowadays, chemical and mechanical meaning to do with our bones and things, chemical knowledge, of course, medicines, drugs, etc., surgery, has overtaken the medical field. So we're missing a whole portion of our medical knowledge that we should be using in interpreting diseases of the body and how to treat and cure them. The important point about light is that it spins. Now, this is where we really get into the nitty-gritty of her conversation. So the important point about light is that it spins in the 2 directions of the electron spiral around the nucleus of the atom. And this column of light, the Caduceus, depicts the combination of these 2 directional spirals of electrons. So these 2 directions are either moving towards a frequency or moving away from a frequency, i.e. your consciousness is expanding out into space or diminishing to a molecular understanding of some person or thing. So in that sense, perception is perceiving and it is creating at the same time the appearance around you. Now this is depicted in my new picture, the indestructible drop. You must become the controlling factor, as it's consciousness alone that moves the atoms that contain the electrons, etc., etc. So when mankind holds the two-directional spirals of the electrons within his own energy field, time and space, as we know them, pass away. Why? Because light is synonymous with time, and light and time have two directions. The first step you must take is to develop your sense of ability to see and hear the light. When I say light is synonymous with time, I mean that light is the absolute aspect, time is the relative aspect, but they're not separate from each other. They are, the relative and absolute are always in union with each other. So developing this sense to see and hear the light is the process of initiation actually into this, into being able to do this. So tachyon energy, which is like, as she explains, the glue of the universe. In the Kybalion, Hermes says that there are three great planes of consciousness: physical, mental, and spiritual. And pyramids are electromagnetic antennas that we focus light into these three electromagnetic fields of tachyon energy: physical, mental, spiritual, so that mankind may study this energy. These three charged electromagnetic fields of tachyons make up the three great planes of consciousness that are represented by the three chambers of the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. The pure energy fields in which the particles of the atom spiral are called tachyon pairs. Tachyons always appear in pairs, and tachyon energy basically means light. So the three electromagnetic charges of tachyon pairs are here, as you can see: positive, 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 negative. That can also be negative, positive, one way or the other way, and negative, negative. So the positive, positive is relating to the king's chamber, representing the spiritual plane of consciousness that we up till now have been talking about as essence. The queen's chamber is representing the mental plane of consciousness, which is, we've been talking about as blueprint. And the subterranean chamber is representing the physical level of consciousness, which we've been talking about as manifest reality. So here we've got a picture here of the king's chamber, queen's chamber, and subterranean chamber, a spiritual, mental, and physical plane. And here's the mirrored image of the pyramid into its below its physical structure, similar again to the circle of immortality, which actually this knowledge has been enlightening me on some further meaning to the circle of immortality that I hadn't thought about, or I hadn't completely understood. So really this has been very, very helpful. The pyramid is a lens or an antenna that refocuses light into its two directions, positive, negative. This refocused light forms a mirrored image, which is where the very famous term "as above, so below" comes from. The physical world is a shadow of the spiritual, and this is described very, very succinctly in Plato's description of the cave. You may be familiar with that story, where physical beings are stuck in a point of view where they can hardly see anything except the shadows from a fire, which are reflected onto a wall of the cave. They can only see the shadows of this spiritual luminosity coming from behind. A very nice description of the physical world. But of course we fixate onto the physical world as being the absolute, as having a reality of its own. So pyramid means light in the middle. So you see here, there's this the shaft of light in the middle of the pyramid. Pyramid, light in the middle, as it helps to refocus excuse me, the light from a negative physical field to a reverse spin of electrons, the positive spiritual field. And each human has, as you know, an electromagnetic field around the body called an aura, and most human auras have a negative electrical charge, which is related to the physical plane. But just like when you change the polarity of a motor, you cause it to run in the opposite direction, so the same can be done with the human electromagnetic field, and this is where the pyramid helps us to do this. So when you learn to see and hear these very small subatomic particles of light and the electron spiral, which is an essential step in the process of ascension to higher planes, you can then change the frequency of your own aura by tuning to the higher frequency of the mental plane and then enter a higher dimension of consciousness, the mental plane, at that point. First, step by step, from physical to mental, then to spiritual. A cone shape also produces the mental plane electromagnetic charge, positive, negative. Every electron spiral has its own frequency, and if one knows the right frequencies to duplicate the frequencies of any object, then that person could tune into that object's electron spiral and resonate that object until it becomes weightless, which is how they say the huge blocks on many of these ancient structures were lifted into place. It's one of the theories anyway. Pythagoreans call the hearing of the subatomic particles the music of the spheres. Even the Christian Bible talks about the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and here these could be equated in atomic terms. The Father being the positive, the Holy Spirit, the positive, negative, and the Son, the negative, negative. And here you can see in this chart. Beings in the physical negative plane generally have no knowledge of the mental positive, negative, and spiritual positive planes. So again, I've put the circle of immortality picture here just to show how there's a similarity in the shape and the meaning of the shape. And I'm probably going to have to go back and revise the book that I wrote about this piece to add many new terms, but I expect that will probably come out in a new book. The electron spiral around the nucleus of an atom is in the reverse direction in the mirrored field. The combination of these two electron spins creates the three tachyon magnetic fields. So tachyon energy is at the very bottom of the structure of the atom. These charged electromagnetic fields make up other subatomic particles of the nucleus of the atom. So it's like before you can ever have an electron, you need to have a mass of tachyons that wish to cohere together to provide enough energy to become all the other subatomic particles. Ultimately, they build up the nucleus of the atom. So really, they are the kind of base building block of existence. Science has not proved this yet, and you can actually only know this by deciphering the Hermetic code, which she and her colleagues did. So I'm going to go through this because I think it's really very useful, but I'm largely going to read rather than go off on tangents here. The Kybalion, the secret book of Hermetic philosophy. So where did it come from? Hermes was the creator of the Great Pyramid, and the pyramid is a tool given to mankind by Hermes so that humanity will understand its reality and be able to go home to the world of spirit, or rather light. Science has based its laws on theories, but the only law that actually holds true in every dimension of existence or planes of tachyon energy is change the energy and you change the manifestation of the mass. So, depending on how your perception interprets the space around you, so will it appear, which is what that means. While in the pyramid, it means change the tachyon energy of your consciousness to a positive charge, and you will change the structure of your body so that you can go anywhere in time and space. And this is the secret of overcoming matter. So after studying the 7 Hermetic principles, it is easy to understand that each principle explains one quality, and I'm about to read these to you now, of how subatomic particles of tachyon energy operate in the universe, how to balance the electrical energy of the body, and how the atom works. Understand the workings of the subatomic particles of tachyon energy, and you will understand how the universe operates. You will understand the knowledge of transforming yourself into light and traveling the universe. And this is what we've already been talking about from Dan Winter's work, the 2 vortices coming down into a central point and entering a different dimension of being. Now this is relating to actually how this really, the Hermetic philosophy is describing to us in its 7 laws how this occurs. So the first law, which and many of these things we've already discussed. In fact, I found it very uncanny that much of what I've been discovering or interpreting throughout this journey of mine to create the shape so that I can make the movie on Bosnia has a base in the Hermetica. So I was very pleased to read this, and also made me feel that I'm very much on track. So the mind is all, the universe is mental. What you think is what you are. We've already talked about this numerous times. What you think you can do is what you will do. You can influence the subatomic particles of tachyon energy and create anything. You can even transform yourself into light and travel the universe. Don't limit yourself. As above, so below, as below, so above. Remember that everything, what I'm describing here, this is a just a summary of the 7 laws. There's more detail if you read them, yourself from the booklet of the Kybalion. So as above, so below, as below, so above. The law is similar on each plane. What is true in the physical is also true within the mental and spiritual planes. What is designed in the spiritual will be reproduced in the physical and vice versa. The third one, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Vibration is frequency. The higher frequency you can attune your electromagnetic field to, the greater consciousness you can achieve. And as we said, this can be done in the pyramid. Secret of resonance means increasing the vibratory rate at systematic intervals. All subatomic particles, i.e. electrons, protons, etc., have a pulsating action. Learn to use this knowledge and apply it to changing your own electromagnetic frequencies in the physical, and you can learn to enter new planes of consciousness. The pyramid only expands your own electromagnetic field or aura. Think of hate, and that will increase. Think of love, and that will increase. The fourth one being everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pairs of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. And I've heard Dr. Karim describing this in different discussions in his biogeometry talks. Tachyon energy operates in pairs. Energy in the pyramid spirals in a large figure of 8. This energy pattern makes up the infinity sign. One half of the pyramid is in the positive frequency, while the other half is in the negative frequency. Understand this about consciousness, and you can understand why there is no beginning and no end when one overcomes matter. The very small subatomic particles, the base structure of the atom, tachyon energy, functions in the positive or negative polarities, or both. Throughout the universe, there are degrees of polarity. These make up the many frequencies of electrical energy. The polarity of the electromagnetic fields determines the level of consciousness manifesting in the human being. The fifth one, everything flows out and in, everything has its tides, all things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. So we look at the pairs of tachyon energy, minus, 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 positive, or positive, minus, and plus, plus, making up the 3 fields of physical, mental, and spiritual. But imagine that in between is like a baton. So you've got the circular ends are the electromagnetic fields. However, in tachyon energy, there is only one point in time when those 2 ends are actually balanced. On all other occasions, one is increasing in size and the other is decreasing. So we see what happens in this constant flux change. As one end increases, the other one decreases. As one decreases, the other increases. There are all phases of short motions going on that create this truth of the 5th Hermetic principle. The 6th, every cause has its effect and every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. The electromagnetic fields of tachyon energy are light that balances the whole universe. Learn to manipulate light and balance the energy fields around you, and you can control your whole environment. Allow your mind to experience guilt and fear, and you will be controlled by what you think. Learn to control these feelings with love, and you will be the controller. This is very important. This is like the difference, I think, between the black path and the white path. So very important to have these feelings of love, compassion, these qualities of the light, and then you can become the controller of the whole situation. By creating this vibration in your own electromagnetic field, you will find the freedom to go home to the positive field of Tachion energy. And the last, the gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. This is easily seen by understanding the two directions of light. The negative field is returning to the spirit, positive, to be regenerated. And the positive field is coming to the physical, negative field to help the physical return to the spiritual. So there's a constant flux of change between the masculine field and the feminine field in the universe. The final law of the Hermetic philosophy is that the lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. Now, Mary quotes this book a lot in her own book called The Secret of Light by Walter Russell, so I thought I would put that here. It was published in 1947, which is, of course, because it deals with laws, just as relevant today as it was then. And if you were interested in this, then you may like to discover more in that book. So the individual who's learned to use the positive and negative frequencies has this freedom to step into the light. I think this is really the bottom line, the nutshell of this conversation. On the 3D physical plane, the negative plane, the time continuum runs from the past to the future, and time is determined by the spiral of the electron. Beings of this plane only know this one-directional spiral of the electrons, which is anti-clockwise. On the 5D spiritual plane, positive, time runs from the future to the past, and the electrons spiral in a clockwise direction. So when an individual enters the 4D mental plane, positive, positive, he learns to see and hear the electron spiral. At this point, he can change water into wine, not by magical miracles, but by understanding the knowledge of the atom and allowing his own electromagnetic field to control the electron spiral. So Mary Hardy says, back in the 1970s, in fact, she quotes the turn of the century, 2000, and the years beyond 2000, as the time when we're advancing to a point where mankind can begin to control the electron spiral, whereby we can enter the mental plane, also because the electromagnetic frequencies of the Earth, of the solar system, are increasing, and we are hence increasing our electromagnetic frequencies as humans here on Earth. So we can enter the mental plane and know both directions of the electron spiral, giving us the chance to eventually return to the spiritual plane. Bosnia. So I thought that I would at least put something about Bosnia into this talk, because, and this is very relevant, because in 1957, Dr. William Reich was jailed because he understood this knowledge. He learned to use the two directions of light to run motors, and with this knowledge, mankind can run anti-gravity and antimatter machinery, which is also what Dan Winter is working on. Reich calls this energy orgone, original energy, which he says is present in every particle of matter and every area of space. And it's the pyramid that refocuses light into galactic or cosmic energy, which is possibly similar to this orgone energy. So using an experimental life energy meter called the Helionosis model LM3 by the company Helionosis in the USA, who's a manufacturer of this instrument, which is based on the same principle as William Reich's device, which is the orgone field meter. Orgone energy measurements have been done regularly from 2012 in various locations within the Bosnian Pyramid complex. This instrument, the LM3, shows the following values in each of the following places as 100%. So on the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, which, as you know, is an artificial pyramid structure. Also on the Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon, which, as you know, is an artificial pyramid structure. The tumulus in Vratnica, which is an artificial conical hill. The underground labyrinth of Ravne, which is the prehistoric artificial network of tunnels and chambers that we've seen and talked about before. And the bell tower, which is here, this picture up on the top right, which is a conically shaped hill in Ravne Park. And actually, I do have some photographs of inside there, but they're so dark that you can only see sort of shadows of people's faces. So you can't really see anything in particular. But what it is a small sort of round chamber where you can go and sit and imbibe this orgone energy. And the entrance to this is inside the Ravne Park itself. So coming back to this picture of Dan's, and now I want to have a look at the center of this of these vortices. So in the center of this shape, and which is also demonstrated in the picture, the indestructible drop, is the merging of a dodecahedron with an icosahedron, which is called an icosahedron. This is the shape that causes the dissolution of the electron into its nucleus, or of matter into light. The merging of these two shapes, and hence what they represent, has been recreated inside the indestructible drop, principally using the numbers 12 and 5, as I've just explained earlier. And these numbers pop up again in the dodecahedron. We have 12 times pentagonal 5-sided faces. And in the icosahedron, we have 12 vertices, which are points where lines converge. 5 lines meet at 12 points at the 12 vertices. An icosahedron can be constructed by cutting each vertex of an octahedron here by the golden ratio, producing 5 octahedrons, and both an icosahedron and dodecahedron can be constructed from 5 of these octahedrons. And here it is split up into its points, the octahedron split up into its points. An icosahedron, which is the amalgamation of icosahedron and dodecahedron, has 30 vortices. 5 times 6 equals 30. So here we come back to the indestructible drop. The circle, starting from the smallest circle, emanation of vibration of perception related to time, and increasing in size according to golden ratio proportion, this creates a tunnel of space. And you can see that better in this picture. From the smallest, it increases in size. So through this creation of vibration, space appears due to this outwardly emanating space of golden ratio emanation. So this emanation of vibration of perception, which is related to time, creates a tunnel of space through which perfect vibration occurs, which is related to the physical manifestation of the 5 elements. So again, we have this connection between the subtle of perception and the physical of manifestation. There are 30 degrees between each position of the 12 circles upon the larger 13th circle. And let's look at the nature of 30 degrees in terms of harmony, as 1 octave of harmonic resonance has 12 semitones. So here we have a whole octave of resonance starting from C, and in semitones, C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp, D, E flat, etc., coming back round to its initial tone. Time also is often measured using numbers 5, 12, and 60. 12 times 5, 60 seconds in a minute, 12 times 5, 16 minutes in an hour, 12 times 2 hours in a day, 12 months in a year, and plus many things that occur within our life, like 12 eggs in a dozen, 12 months in a year, 12 inches in a foot, 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 disciples of Jesus, and also in other mythological stories, 12 pops up all over the place. So where did this geometry derive from? This all geometry, in fact, is derived from a 1260-based math, which comes from the ancient Sumerian culture of Mesopotamia. Here's a map of Mesopotamia and, around 3500 BC. So this comes from counting the knuckles of the 4 long fingers. So 3 times 4 equals 12, 3 knuckles, 4 fingers equals 12. Then multiplying them by all the 5 digits on the other hand, 12 times 5 equals 60. All of our main shapes fit into the 360-degree circle. Pythagoras noticed when a tauten string was plucked that it would create a tone, and when that string was divided in half, it would make that same tone twice as high in pitch and again and again and again, as you divided that by half, 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 etc. According to Pythagoras, all musical notes were found by using mathematics, and as such were given number values according to their placement in a kind of master grid. Pythagoras then came up with numerical ratios based on harmonic fifths, and this led to the creation of the musical scale found at the root of most modern music. I.e., using fifths from a note number 1, he was eventually guided to note 27, which occurs within the human audible range. And to find the note twice as high in pitch, he kept doubling it: 54, 108, 216, 432, etc. And let's look at this Hertzian cycle of 432, which many ancient musical instruments happen to produce the same tone that vibrates at 432 cycles per second. For many decades, most modern musical instruments were also tuned to the same fourth octave A, with the value of 432 cycles. And to understand who chose this note as a keystone for musical tuning and why, we must look at geometry. This is very important, actually, because it sums up the whole basis of harmony. In each of the first 4 geometric shapes, so we have circle, triangle, square, and pentagon, are angles of degrees that, when added together, always total a specific number relative to that particular shape. So inside a circle, we have 360 degrees, 60, 60, 60 makes 180 degrees, etc., etc. And the interesting point here is that when you add the digits together of these numbers, they always come to 9. So, and like 432, also 432 also comes to 9. So applying these numbers of vibration in cycles, we find 2D geometry expressed by tones that create the most beautiful form of music, a perfect 3-part major chord in the key of F sharp. Now, I hope that you're all musically inclined enough to understand the terminologies of sharps and flats and all the rest of it. I'm sure you know this from biogeometry as well, which I know deals with frequency. So, for example, we start with 3-sided triangles, an F sharp, then a 4-sided square is an F sharp, an octave higher than the triangle, which is double, so 180 times 2 is 360. Then the 5-sided pentagon is a harmonic fifth above the F sharp. Then the 6-sided hexagon is F sharp, is double again, 360 times 2 is 720, makes an F sharp 2 octaves higher than the triangle and 1 octave higher than the square and circle. And then the septagon makes 900, which is an A sharp required to complete an F sharp major chord in perfect 3rd-part harmony. And then the octagon, which is the C sharp, a harmonic fifth above F sharp. So we've got this this range of perfect harmony occurring from these shapes at 1 by 1, so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-sided shapes. Plato took this further to look at 3D geometric shapes, and indeed 4 of his 5 platonic solids create an F sharp major chord. So the 3 angles of a tetrahedron 720, the cube 2160, the octahedron 1440, and the icosahedron 3600. So again, this creates a perfect 3-part harmony of the F sharp scale. And this also refers to flower of life and the seed of life. So looking at the seed of life here, we can see there are 7 circles, or 6 circles creating this 7. So we have the first circle, again, 360, 720, etc., making again this 3-part perfect harmony of this scale. Modern tuning calls for equal temperament, unfortunately, which no longer adheres to Pythagoras' whole number simplicity, as musical instruments are no longer tuned to an A vibrating at 432, but to 440. And this is a pity because, as we're going to discover, the 432 Hertzian wave is related to cosmic, universal, cosmic, solar system, planetary. It's tuned to real, and I use that term in the sense of actual frequencies which we can find in our natural world around us, extending right out into the cosmos. So by the tuning method required to reveal the geometric shapes is based on a mathematical grid rather than mathematical ratios. This is known as the factor 9 grid because the number 9 is found not only as the sum of every note on the grid, but also as the number required to move up and down the scale. So 126 plus 9 is 135, plus 9 is 144, plus 9 is 153. So here on this grid, we find all of our geometric numbers which are related to these shapes, but modern tuning does not reveal one correlation to geometric numbers. So it's like in our modern world, we are out of tune, which is very, very significant. All we have to do is add or subtract the number 9 to reveal all the other tones in that octave, as I described here. So again, this number that I started off by describing to you that I found very, with some great synchronicity, actually, I found this number 9 related to the Naga beings, and during my dragon study very early on in my interpretation of the Bosnian Pyramids, this number 9 keeps coming up again and again and again. And here it is in this factor 9 grid built on the 432 Hertzian structure. So since all life can be expressed in energy, frequency, and vibration, we should be looking at the numerical information revealed by the factor 9 grid. Cosmically, the precession of the Earth is roughly 25,920 years. Again, we see these numbers 12, 60, 72, 180, 12 times 2160, 60 times 432, 72 times 360, 180 times 144. These are all numbers which occur in the factor 9 grid, equals 25,920, the precession of the Earth, which is the movement of the whole universe around its axis, one turn of the whole universe around its axis. When the grid is tuned to anything but 432, this grid does not produce any interesting patterns at all. But if we tune to 432, all move up and down in multiples of 9 in this 14 tone matrix, being 14 numbers here, of synchronicity that appears. Like all of the numbers relevant to every primary shape, triangle, square, every 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, I'm not sure about 4-dimensional, 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional shape at least, appear in this grid. When we play the numbers of all the primary geometric shapes together as frequencies, we get a 3-tone numerically perfect major chord, which answers the question of why the keystone of 4th octave A at 432 cycles was the ultimate tuning note, because it creates a force existing in harmony with itself. So it's a perfect harmonic structure relating to everything we know in our natural environment. So experimenting with the Fibonacci sequence, which I've described before, and these are the numbers, the first few numbers of the Fibonacci sequence. Since the single digit vibrations cannot be heard by the human ear, we cannot apply these numbers directly to frequencies. So to determine how the Fibonacci sequence may work in this respect, we're substituting the number 1 with 180, our first number on the factor 9 grid, as the triangle. 180, so 1, 1, 180, 180, 2, so 180 times 2, 360, 3, 180 times 3, 540. And we see triangle, circle, square, pentagon, septagon, double tetrahedron, or a Merkaba. So again, this perfect structure of harmony is also existing within the Fibonacci sequence, which is also related to the golden ratio, as I've described before. This is not an arbitrary sequence, but comes out as perfectly harmonious when played. And here we have assigning the sonic frequency to the first square, 144. This is how we build a golden ratio Fibonacci spiral. This is the way to build it, by adding one, then one on the side, then doubling it, etc., etc., all the way to become a golden ratio. The golden ratio of roughly 1.61 or 1.618. But when you times 1.61 by 1.61, you get 2.592, and that, as we've just seen, the 25,920 years is the approximate number of years for a precession of the equinox, one full turn of the universe around its center. You can see the precession. Perfect harmony is built into the structure of the universe and what we see around us. So this is really beautiful. This is a very comprehensive understanding of harmony and geometry and shape, and why do shapes create harmony? Because they are harmonious. They, in their sound, in their light form of shape, in their sound form of frequency, they all perfectly match, and they resonate one to the other, as above, so below. It's just such a beautiful concept. You can see it from universe down to the galaxies, down to the solar systems, to the planetary systems, to our own human system, to also our atomic structure and that which goes on inside our nucleus. On every single level, dimensional level of existence, we are vibrating harmoniously and appearing harmoniously. It's really, I find this something that is very beautiful. So I'm going to come now onto the main topic of this session. I couldn't resist to add those further interpretations here, because they're things that I've discovered recently that are pertinent to the process by which I'm going to lay out the movie and also interpret both the crystal of time and the new picture, the Indestructible drop. So at the beginning of this session, I showed you a provisional layout that I wasn't really satisfied with, which is why I put down my pen and I started doing more research, and hence created the new picture in Indestructible drop. So this has been a work of since last September to now. So now I sort of come back to the drawing board again and started by looking at the key numbers in the picture's crystal of time and the Indestructible drop. So what are the key numbers coming out? We've got 1 octave of harmonic resonance in the crystal of time, of whole tones, that is, which equals number 8, plus the golden central circular space in the center, plus relating to the number of vibrations of each circle in golden ratio proportion in the Indestructible drop, equals 9. 5 principal layers of magnetism of the golden lines, 5 of the dark blue lines, the 5 elements, the 5 mental attributes of the Indestructible drop. So we've got the number 5. The number of main circles in the Indestructible drop forming 1 octave of harmonic resonance in semitones is 12, plus 1 whole circle that contains these 12 little smaller circles is 13. And tuning to 432, moving up and down in multiples of 9, a 14-tone matrix of synchronicity appears. So we've also got the number 14 as well. And I mean, there are other things that relate to these numbers, which I've been describing to you in my different interpretations of different aspects through my various sessions. So let's come back to the crystal of time. And now, I'm going to go into more detail. I'm going to look at some, for example, the base of the picture, you may remember, has this layout of the 4 elements. So we've got the air, the fire, the water, and the earth. And I'm using the colors related to the highest yogic tantra of Tibetan Buddhism for the shapes. The colors of the shapes rather, and this is the Fibonacci spiral in golden ratio. So what I did was I just pulled up each one. So this one here becomes this one here, this one here becomes this one here, this one here becomes this one here, etc. the whole way through. So we have the 12 elements in Fibonacci golden ratio shapes air, fire, water, earth, earth, water, fire, air, air, fire, water, earth. So they're kind of going kind of like this way, that way, this way. And as a complete flow, it looks something like this. Now, extending this, I put this chart into these numbers, breaking it up into 3 sections, but I added in the other points, so crystals and the indestructible drop, the gold, which is inside the golden circle, which is inside the 64 grid. This grid of 64 is the 4 elements, all put together in a 8 times 8 grid. But we know that inside, because this is shown in the center here, we know that inside this 64 grid is this circle, and this will also occur here, although it's hidden. So we have a crystal, we have the elements, we have another crystal, we have the 64 grid, we have the central golden circle, which is the indestructible drop. We have the other part of the 64 grid, the circle, and again the elements, all enclosed within a larger crystal here. So what I did was I just created this kind of this symbolism for the whole of the crystal of time, so that I would have a flow, and again 1, 2, 3, 4, flowing in 12 segments. So adding in the other aspects, these small crystals, 64 grid and the indestructible drop and the large crystals, I created this structure, which then I expanded. So then I realized that this is very nice, because now I have these 3 layers of physical, mental, and spiritual, which means that possibly throughout the movie, I can try to increase the frequency, starting off with 1 section of physical, increasing the frequency to mental, and then increasing the frequency to spiritual. So if I could try and incorporate what Mary Hardy was saying in her book about the Tachion Energy, from negative, negative to negative, positive to positive, positive. Again, at this point, I'm still figuring things out. Then that would really actually work for, if I could impress this, embed this into the movie, then theoretically the movie would become a way that a viewer could increase their frequency through watching the different layers A to Z. So let's just look at this first layer. Now what I did was I created a linear symbolic procession of what should come first, second, third, fourth. So we've got a crystal, we've got an element, we've got an element, we've got a crystal, we've got the factor 64 grid, we've got the circle, the indestructible drop in the middle, we've got the factor 64 grid, and we've got a crystal, all enclosed within a larger crystal. So we have now 9 sections to this first section of physical. Mental, again, what I did was I used these symbols again. We've got an element, 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 crystal, small crystal, factor 64 grid, indestructible drop, factor 64 grid, crystal, element, 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 which creates 13 sections. And then spiritual, again, we've got this similar format, creating 9 sections with the big crystal around it. So I need to code each of these symbolic aspects into types of visuals. So the crystals will become one type of visual, the 4 elements, each of those, the air will become one type of visual, the fire will be another type of visual, the water, etc., etc. Then this factor 64 grid, which relates to our DNA, will become another kind of visual, indestructible, etc., etc. So adding these up, 9, 13, and 9, means that there would be 31 sections of visuals occurring in 3 parts to the movie. So now putting this into writing, like I said, I've looked at Crystal of Time and its layout, and I found that all the answers are already there. But now I have, because I have the interpretation and the study that I've been doing up to this date, I will be able to match these symbols with the meanings and try to embed those meanings through skillful use of visuals and music into the movie. So here we have 1 octave of tones, which is 8. There's 8 sections here, plus the larger crystal creating the 9th that encompasses the whole of it. Then we've got 1 octave of semitones, which is 12, plus 1, 13, which comes round to the original. Again, in the indestructible drop, we've got the 12 circles inside one larger circle. And again, I've described these in words. So now these are the symbols of the previous page described in words. And again, the third part, 1 octave of tones is 8, and then with the larger crystal makes 9. So now how was I going to do the timing of the visuals? So I come back again to this 9 vibrations, which occur with each of the 12 main circles in the indestructible drop is having these 9 vibrations. So 9 times 12 is 108. 108 is one of the numbers on our factor 9 grid of 432 Hertzian wave. Great. 108 minutes is quite long for a movie, so I thought divide that by 2. We have 54 minutes, which is pretty good length for a documentary. And 54 is also on our factor 9 grid, so this is really, really great. Maybe one day there'll be a second movie, and then that will make up to 108 minutes. So we have 54 minutes of 31 sections, which, if they are divided into equal sections, would be 1.74 minutes per section, 104.5 seconds. So now I'm going into more and more detail. So corresponding to the 3 planes of tachyon energy, we have the first physical layer, which is 9 sections. And now I'm thinking perhaps this could be in Fibonacci vibration of timing. So golden ratio proportion of timing. The second, the mental section, 13 sections, perhaps this could be linear, occurring 1.74. So this would be divided into equal sections using the timing divided into equal sections, 1.74 minutes per section times 13 sections. And then the third of spiritual, so again, there are 9 sections here, perhaps again in the Fibonacci vibration of timing. So now I look deeper into this, and I've expanded this into a chart. We've got the 54, so now we get into math here. We've got 54 minutes of the whole movie divided by 31 sections of the movie, times 9, because in the first section and in the third section there are going to be 9. We've got 9 symbols from the crystal of time. So the whole length of the first and the third section will be 15.68 minutes, divided into 9 sections organized into golden ratio proportion. And so through this chart, I was able to work out these 9 sections of sections 1 and 3. So the first, which relates to a crystal, would be 3 minutes. Now it's a symbol of the crystal, and I haven't decided yet what the visuals related to the crystals will be, but there'll be 3 minutes of visuals related to the symbol of the crystal. Then the second is one of the elements, I think it was air, and that will be related to a visual related, which has a meaning of air in some way. I've got to symbolically now match up the visuals to the symbols which are already laid out in the crystal of time. So you can see golden ratio proportion again, 3, which makes a total of 15.68 minutes. Now, the timing for the second section of the visuals, as I've said before, we've got the 54 minutes of the whole movie divided by 31 times 13 sections, which will be inside section 2. So the total number of minutes will be 22.64 minutes. So we've got 13 sections of 1.74 minutes each. And again, according to the layout of the symbols, which I've just shown you, I will have to decide how to match up those symbols with visual. Then I conceived a layout of 2 Fibonacci spirals in golden ratio proportion containing the 5 elements and the 5 mental aspects, And in a sense, this is relating to the 9 vibrations that we've seen in the indestructible drop, but expanding them a bit further because we've got a central point and we've got 2 outer points as well. Of course, this is not really an outer point. This is where I stopped the process of making the spiral. I mean, it could go on ad infinitum, but you know, I've only got so much space on the page. So then I divided these into 13 aspects, and these are relating to the 5 elements, the 5 mental aspects, which I described earlier is contributing to the process of creating the ego, and starting at a subtle realm or mind and ending at a physical solid manifest reality, and the central space, which is perceptive awareness, all together create 13 points. And again, this relates back to the indestructible drop, the 12 main circles inside one whole circle, making 13 main circles. Each of the 12 main circles are emanating in vibrations of golden ratio proportion. So this Fibonacci sequence pattern would symbolically show this. This could be a way that I could somehow, and this is where things get tricky, and this is where I haven't quite figured things out yet, is that if I were to use this grid for the timing of the music, looking at these 13 plus 1, now I got, when I created these lines, I used the outermost point of each section. So you see that this circle comes to here, this circle comes to, not circle, this line comes to here, bending line comes to here. I discovered, of course, that there are 2 lines coming through the central point. So which one was I to choose, the vertical or the horizontal? I mean, which one is more important? So I thought, well, maybe I need to include both. So including both, rather than 13, we actually have 14 lines, and actually this would come relate to our 14-tone matrix of synchronicity, like when tuned to the 432 Hertzian range on the factor 9 grid. So this would be perfect, actually, for the timing of the music. And somehow, if I could symbolically represent music that touched the meaning of subtle realm, form, water, fire, conditioning, etc., all the way through, these are like my symbols relating to the music, then I would theoretically be able to create a 432 Hertzian wave grid. I mean, a 432 wave frequency throughout the movie. So this would run, and again, like I said, I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do this, because I have to consider not just a linear, like a horizontal line, I have to consider also vertical lines. And I know by experience that the information will come as I'm doing it. So this music in 14 sections will stretch from minute 0 to 54 of the whole movie. So on top of this, we'll have the visuals in 3 sections, as I've described to you. We'll have the music underneath in this 432 Hertzian wave. And then, so far, this is the synopsis of the Bosnian movie layout in a nutshell. We've got the timing of the visuals, 15.68, related to the 9 sections, 22.64 related to the middle section, 13 sections, and 15.68 minutes relating to the 9 sections. Again, physical, mental, and spiritual. We've got the music operating in 13 plus 1, so 14 sections going from beginning to end in these 2 Fibonacci spirals, to be determined. This timing of this music is to be determined, and how to arrange it symbolically to be determined. Then the narration will relate to the dark blue lines of electricity and the golden lines of magnetism in female and male voices. So the male voices will relate to electricity and the female voices to magnetism. So these will be interchanging throughout the timeline. And I'm actually going to use people who I've videoed talking during the visuals, and them saying very punctuating phrases. I'm going to use those male and female voices. So again, as the crystal of time dictates, I'm going to, so where there's a blue line, I'll use male voice. Where there's the golden lines, I'll use female voices. So throughout the whole timeline, I'm going to interchange the electricity and magnetism. So through these, as I said, through these 3 levels of the movie, I would need to lead somehow. This is now my aim. And I've come to this point finally after 3.5 years of investigation. I would need to lead the viewer up the scales of harmonic resonance from physical to mental to spiritual planes, using all the tools of movie making. So the visuals, which relate to light, the music, which relates to sound, the narration, which relates to perception, and the timing, which relates to frequency. So here we are, and in 3 weeks' time, today, I am going to present to you at least the first draft of the movie. Things may change between now and then, but at least I have something to work with, and maybe that will mutate into more within the next 3 weeks. But so we meet again on the 6th of May at 6:30 p.m. to watch how this all turns out. Thank you very much, and I look forward to presenting it to you next time.
Thank you, Susan. This is incredible. You have so much meaning, so much information embedded in your work. It's just like, American dollars. Each picture has some meaning. Do you want to open up and see if people have questions?
Yes, please. Anybody, if they have a question, do fire away.
Anyone? Actually, I'm curious. Did Mary's son respond to the pyramid?
Yes, apparently he did. And the interesting thing was that they discovered that his mind was already in the positive spiritual frequency. So he could not actually relate to this physical plane because he was operating at a very, very much higher level of frequency. So what they had to do was, in fact, what they did was they created a place in the pyramid that relates to that positive frequency area, the place that resonates that positive frequency. And they sat him there, whereas the rest of them sat down in the negative frequency. He sat up, something like what looks like the King's Chamber, positioning above the ground. And by sitting within the spiritual frequency, he was able to start to relate to the physical frequency. So yeah, it all worked out perfectly. But the thing was that he also, her son also started to bring back a lot of knowledge from the spiritual plane, and he would, and sometimes he would go almost not unconscious, but he would lie prostrate, and he would go cold, as if, I mean, not dead, but sort of comatose in a way, and then he would come back and he would give them the most incredible information about so many things. This pyramid has been a whole story in itself. In fact, they created 2 pyramids, one square-based and one tetrahedron, which have different functions. And they're open to the public. They're in the States. I think they're in Illinois, Michigan area. Is that Illinois?
It's okay.
I would have to check exactly where she is, but I think it's Michigan area.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and they're open to the public. But I recommend, if you were interested, to look into that in more detail. That her book is just full of revelations. It's really fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I found that this was like the cherry on the icing of the cake of all the investigations I've done up to this date. That reading her book back in January this year kind of gave me the last bit of information that I needed to really push ahead with the process of creating this movie, or embedding the information I needed to embed into the movie. So I don't say it's complete. I don't say I've got all the information, but I say now I've got enough to really head in the direction that I want to. This is what I would like to do. Theoretically, I'd like to create this vibrational increase through the movie. You know, it may take me several attempts, but you know, within the next few weeks, we're going to see at least a first draft of it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Who is doing the music, Susan?
Well, actually, that's a very nice question, because now I have little opportunity to create the music, which was actually offered to me by a very, very special musician down in South India, who, when he heard that I was making this movie, this was several years ago, I met him at a function down in South India. He's a brilliant musician. He said, you know what? I will make the music for this movie. And I think this will be the work of my life.
Wow.
And now we are in lockdown. And now we are in such a situation that actually, at least for now, at least for my first draft, and it's the only way that I'm going to be able to create the music is by using the music that I've recorded from the sessions in the Ravne Park, which are actually very, very nice. And I was kind of like, it was stalling me to make the movie, this very point, because I was like, oh, I can't get my music, blah, blah, blah. But then I thought, you know what? Actually, I have everything within my visuals, because a lot, well, not a lot, but a number of the visuals that I took were in the evening sessions in the Ravne Park, where they have the most incredible musicians playing, drummers, African drumming beats, and these beautiful Japanese gongs, and these Tibetan bowls, and these crystal bowls, and these beautiful singers. And I thought, you know what? I can actually use these different types of music, because their vibrations are also in different ranges, to create the music for this movie. So, you know, I always take every situation as it comes. And here we are in the middle of a lockdown. I'm making this movie, and this is what I got. So life has forced me to make it like this. And perhaps this is the way that it's meant to be. So do you see, the guy in South India, he's still there, and if the music comes out atrociously, then after all this is over, then I can trot down to South India and he can have another attempt at it. But even I was thinking, you know, how do I do the narration? Normally I go to a sound studio in Delhi, and you know, they have all the proper equipment and the padding on the walls, and you don't get the echoes and the blah blah blah. I thought, you know what? I've got these beautiful phrases of people saying the most magical things within the movie. It's all here. So I can use what I've got to make it. And maybe I'm in this situation now because that's what I meant to do.
Yeah, I hear the excitement in your voice, and it's just like it's all going to come together beautifully.
So, you know, rather than maybe something contrived, it's just already there, and it's all Bosnia. That's the beautiful thing about the visuals I've got, the music I've got, and the narration I've got. It really happened in Bosnia, in the vibe of Bosnia. So maybe that's how it's meant to be.
Well, thank you for taking the time to explain this so carefully to us. It's incredible.
Well, thank you for taking the time to listen to it. I know a lot of it is long-winded, and I know it's been repetitive, but in a sense I've had to repeat and add and repeat and add, because this has been the process that I've been going through. I've been discovering, then discovering more, and then integrating it into a different way of seeing it. And this has really been, this is, to be honest, this is the bare bones of the interpretation. There's more, a lot more. And I've actually had to be careful to try and put it into a nutshell, not to go off, you know, at tangents in so many places, because otherwise, you know, we'd be here the whole year just discussing the interpretation. And, you know, I think you'd run out of patience by that point.
No, we really appreciate this one. And if the lockdown continues, you run out of things to do, I think we could continue this.
We look forward to seeing your you know, your next step with this.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, in the next session, I will be showing you this, at least the first stage of this, or the first draft, or maybe this is the final draft. I don't know. I'm going to be making it in the next 3 weeks, and we'll see how it comes out, and then I'll get your feedback.
Yes, thank you.
We all need to put our good thoughts and energies towards helping Susan make this.
Thank you. Yes, please send me the vibes. Send me the vibes.
Yes, yes, and we're really looking forward to our next session. And it's really an honor for us to be able to be part of this one.
Thank you. Well, and for me to share it with you, really, I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we'll conclude the session, and I wish you all be safe and healthy. Okay, thank you, Susan.
Thank you,
Thank
Susan.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.